Hey guys, welcome back to another Genshin tier list video, and this is going to be a follow-up episode to my version 1 characters where I talk about where their current standing is in the game at the moment. But this time it'll be for version 2. I had a lot of people asking me to make a version 2 video in the version 1 video after I talked about if you guys want me to do one for version 2. Now fortunately, version 2 doesn't have as many characters to go over because there's not an initial wave of 20 to go with, so I hope this could be a lot faster. I also decided one thing I wanted to add was another tier. So in the first video, I had 5 tiers where I had, guide carry still pretty good, and then I had good but extremely niche. But I feel like there were a few instances where I probably should have had just an okay tier where it's like they're not quite in pretty good, but they're also not really niche because they're supposed to be more of a general kind of, I guess, B tier character. But apart from that, we have benched and never good. The tiers are exactly the same, and we're gonna go into version 2 characters. So it'll be Ayaka and then everyone from Yoimiya up until Hazel. So not as many characters to talk about, but should still be a pretty good video, and I hope you guys enjoy. Oh, I should mention a quick disclaimer. If you hear any like whirring or humming in the background, it is autumn season, so there's leaf blowers blowing everywhere outside, so I apologize for that. I could wait until they're done, but then I'd have to wait like 4 or 5 hours to record this video, and I have other stuff to do at the end of the day. So time to get started. We're gonna open up with everyone's golden girl, Ayaka. Ayaka is still pretty good. Cryo has fallen off considerably in market share ever since we had Dendro. Not saying that Cryo is bad or anything, it's still a pretty good element to have, and Freeze is still one of those teams that can be good to cheese for a lot of dungeons and Spiral Abyss, but for the most part Ayaka is not quite as high demand as she used to be, so she would have been guide carry at the start of version 2 and then maybe at the very beginning of version 3 before we were still exploring Dendro. Now not so much. Still pretty good though. Next character is gonna be, let's see, where is she? We're gonna do Yoimiya. Yoimiya is okay. She has gotten decently better with the advent of double hydro, and she's still a very solid character to use. The only problem with her is that even though she does a lot of good damage in single target and she can be pretty friendly for mobile users, it's still jarring to know that if you so much as even move incorrectly while you're attacking, you essentially reset your entire auto attack rotation, and she is heavily dependent on the last 2 shots of her attack pattern to do the most damage. It doesn't matter if you shield her or if you give her super armor of any sort. If you move by accident, you can lose out on a lot of damage. So she still suffers from a bit of inconsistency, and because some enemies move around a lot, yes, because she stays still, she doesn't have to chase after them as much as a melee character does, but even so, she still has to cancel her attack rotation and then maybe go after them or wait for them to resurface. So a lot of things get in the way of making Yoimiya a really good character. She is good, don't get me wrong, but I think a bow hyper carry as, say, Linny is a bit more consistent than her overall, despite the fact that she can abuse double hydro. Still a decent unit though, and I think you should definitely invest in her if you want someone to use, especially for mobile users who don't have as much room for mechanical execution. Yoimiya is a very comfortable character. You just stand still and mash the auto attack button. Very simple. Next one's gonna be Shogun. Shogun is in god carry, but for different reasons than you might expect. Shogun for the most part has turned into kind of this jack of all trades character. Not that she's a bad jack of all trades character. She's usable in teams like her own, Raiden National, which is not as good as it used to be. There are definitely better nationals out there. I would say Child International is a lot stronger. And then you can also use her for Hyper Bloom teams. You can use her for a few things here and there. Like she has good coverage in terms of teams because of the fact that her elemental skill increases elemental burst damage, and it's a very consistent elemental skill for electro application. It's not the fastest out there, and if you want to go, let's say, Raiden hyper carry, there are better hyper carry options out there. The reason I'm putting her in god carry is not so much for the fact that she's the most optimal option for every team, but because she can go into so many teams and it's a decent choice in so many teams. So I guess she's not necessarily a master of all, but she's pretty good at all of them. I actually found out that Genshin GG, they put her in B tier for some reason, which is a little questionable. I mean, maybe I might move her down to like pretty good. I would say with Shogun, I value her high just because of her usability. Some people might say that because she's not a best in slot choice for other teams, that she's not in god carry. For god carry, you have to be a best in slot choice, but I put more emphasis in versatility and usability. Kucho Sada is going to be niche. She is very niche. She's one job, driving electro damage, not driving electro reactions, but specifically driving electro damage thanks to her Constellation 6. That comes with the caveat of, yes, you need Constellation 6 on her to be good, but she is niche. I actually almost want to put her in benched because even in electro hyper carry, she kind of doesn't really have a reason to be used as the best in slot. Like, you can sub her in for other characters that can boost a unit's damage, but she does have a use in triple electro, which is essentially mono electro with her, Shogun, and Miko, so she has a niche, and it's a pretty competitive one. Kokomi is going to be guide carry. Kokomi is like very similar to Zhongli. She's like the version 2 of Zhongli, where she is not optimal damage-wise for any team. You will be taking a DPS cut when you use her, as opposed to Xingqiu, Yelan, or any other Hydro, or like any other person with the offensive Hydro capabilities, but she provides you with a very comfortable margin for error, and she can be used in any team that requires Hydro. So she has the same policy as Shogun, where I put her in guide carry for no other reason than you can use her anywhere. She's a very comfy character. So for maybe the super optimal speedruns, you're never going to use her, but for the vast majority of players who just want to clear the content and not be a sweaty malting gamer when they do so, Kokomi is one of the best units in the game. Toma is okay. I thought about putting him in niche. In fact, I still might. However, Toma has actually evolved from other purposes besides Burgeon. People know him as the Burgeon guy because of the way he applies Pyro. But the thing with Toma, and I think that's something that I actually myself have downplayed a lot, and I kind of regret doing so, is that the one benefit that he provides that would normally have him get overshadowed by Zhongli is that Toma has an element. Zhongli is Geo. Geo sucks. Geo doesn't resonate with anything and it doesn't synergize with anything. Toma, on the other hand, can give you the option to swap out other characters to then provide a passing grade shielding value. In other words, he can keep your team relatively topped off. He's not that ineffective in terms of defensive support, but he can still provide you things like if you need a token bit of Pyro application, let's say if you want to go. Hu Tao is a good example. So for Hu Tao, the traditional double Hydro would be her, Yelan, Xingqiu, and Zhongli. But Zhongli, even though he's very good, right? You know, Zhongli's a very good character and he always will be. It's the fact that he doesn't have an element that kind of holds him back from being a top tier. Toma, on the other hand, if you were to include him in Hu Tao double Hydro, would not only give you enough shielding to keep herself alive, but he would also give double Pyro for Pyro Resonance. That's bonus attack. Now Hu Tao is more of an HP scaler, not so much attack, but attack is still attack. So Toma actually has a few uses that I feel like I've been downplaying a lot in the past that put him above the realm of niche. He's actually not so much of a niche support. He's more of a general defensive and kind of utility oriented character. It's just that he's not a very high stat in one. I wish he did a little bit more in terms of either like buffing characters or in terms of defense, but he's usable. So I think he'll belong in OK tier. The next three characters, I'm going to put them all together. Itto, Goro, and Yunshin are all in benched. Hear me out, listen. Mono Geo has always been a gimmick or like a niche composition. It has been competitive in the past because Itto's damage, especially if you gear him up correctly, especially if you have the right team composition with him, he can do a pretty serious amount of damage. But we're now entering a position, or we're now entering a point in the meta where Mono Geo has officially just been rendered obsolete, right? We're gonna have Lenny who came in and he brought in Mono Pyro. We're gonna have Nicolette. We're gonna have Farina coming in. Like, we're gonna be advancing the meta a lot more. And Mono Geo has already been failing to withstand the test of time against Dendro. They were barely at best like a B+, A- tier composition in 2.0. In version 3, when the floor has gotten so much higher thanks to Hyper Boom, Quicken, and the like, Geo has started to fall into more of like a B tier. But now that we're advancing into 4.0 and we're probably going to get a lot of characters that can make other characters stronger and usher in a new kind of playstyle and win condition, Mono Geo has officially fallen off. I'm being serious. It's like Itto and Goro, they can't keep up anymore. I'm sorry. I know that there are a lot of people who swear by Mono Geo and that it's still competitive and it can still handle most of the game's content. And even if it can, it's the Eula argument, right? Where there are just so many better and easier teams to work on that can do so much more on top of having more accessibility in other various fields. Whereas Mono Geo, not only does it require a substantial amount of investment because you're gearing up specific characters for a specific purpose, but the ceiling of that team, it just cannot keep up with what is currently meta. So I feel like relative to where they used to be, they definitely have fallen off. They've become benched. And as for Yunshin, who's not necessarily a Mono Geo character, she's more of an attack speed buffer. The thing with attack speed that I feel like a lot of people kind of try to justify is that attack speed is just another way to deal damage, right? If you increase the attack speed of Yoimiya, and Yunshin does a decent job at doing so, you could also just increase Yoimiya's attack or her elemental damage and get the same end result, more damage. Yunshin's attack speed buff is not enough to really justify using her, right? If it was 50% instead of whatever, I think our current value is, let me just double check, 12%. If it was 50%, then yeah, like Yunshin would be fantastic for any auto-attacking team. But she doesn't do that much to where like if you were to put, you know, Yoimiya, Bennett, Zhongli, and then if you were to either use Yunshin, you could swap her out for Yelan, you could swap her out for Kazuha, you know, like she's so replaceable as a character. And for, let's say, if you want to use her alongside Hu Tao for more auto-attack speed, again, you could replace her with Yelan, you could replace her with I was gonna say Bennett, that does work. You can replace it with Kazuha. There are just so many other characters that can do the same end result. Maybe not buff her attack speed, but they can buff her damage overall, and that just contributes to the same effect of increasing her DPS. So Yunjin has not really much of a place in the meta because her niche of buffing attack speed is also kind of hindered by the fact that she's a Geo character. So she can't even increase resonance. She can increase Geo resonance, but why would you want to put two Geo characters on a team that isn't Geo? If she was an animal unit or if she was a cryo unit, maybe she would have more uses, but because she's Geo, can't really do too much. Shenhe is going to be niche. Now, before you guys write off in the comments, why did I put these two characters in the same tier when Shenhe is infinitely better? I agree, Shenhe's broken. She's a 5-star cryo support that makes cryo so much better compared to Sada being a 4-star electro support that makes electro a little bit better. I could put her in okay, but she is niche. You know, that is the definition of niche. She's for cryo and only for cryo. You could say, you know, she can buff attack damage for like all elements. It's just that she buffs cryo a bit better, but no. Shenhe's niche, and she always will be, but of all the niche characters, she's probably one of the best, right? Like if there was a Hydro Shenhe or a Pyro Shenhe, that'd be absurd. I definitely am one of those people who stan Shenhe, I'm a simp, but she's going to be in niche. That is her purpose. Miko is pretty good. She's gotten noticeably better thanks to the buff to Electro via Dendro, and I'm not entirely sure because I haven't tested it out myself yet. I don't know how much the Golden Troop set improves her DPS a little bit because I myself play Miko as more of a skill bot, not really a burst. Some people use her as a burst bot as well, where they kind of rotate and burst and then recast the skill. Either way, Miko's pretty good. She's very solid for roughly any kind of electro need you want. Do I think she's as good as Fischl? Not necessarily. However, one benefit that she does have that Fischl doesn't have is that Fischl is targeting based, as in she mostly attacks, apart from like the few attacks that Oz throws out independently, she mostly targets the person that you're targeting, whereas Miko is more of an area controller because you can put the Sessho and Sakura down anywhere, and then you can also recast them. So she has good area coverage in that regard, and she's a very solid character. I actually might put her in God carry because for some teams, without having her, those teams can't work. Those teams just physically cannot function. So Miko's gotten a lot better, and I'm very glad because I felt like a lot of people were underwhelmed when she was released, and she deserves to be a lot higher given her position. Ayato is going to be next. Ayato is in okay. Ayato has always been weird. When he came out, he was serviceable. He was not a bad character by any means, and when he was compared to Child, I would say most people agreed that Child was a bit better in terms of ceiling, whereas Ayato was, his playstyle spoke to some more people a little bit better. Now, we're gonna have Novelette soon, or by the time you see this video, Novelette already came out. So at this point, I would say there are plenty of other Hydro on-fielders that could do his job a lot better. Child International is one of the best teams in the game, and then Novelette coming out is, I would honestly say, a frankly better version of Ayato in every sense of the word. Now, Ayato is more kind of party agnostic. He can fit into a lot of different parties. He basically is an on-field Xingqiu, whereas Novelette is more of a on-field damage dealer, like hyper carry. But if you're going to use Ayato, you could just use Xingqiu, Kokomi, Yelan, like, you know, any other character for Hydro application, and then remove the onus of having to put them off field. An argument can be made that Ayato gets rid of the need to have Kokomi, Xingqiu, and Yelan. You could put them into another party, but again, we're getting a lot of Hydro units now. We're going to get Farina soon too. So Ayato is falling off not by virtue of his own merits or lack thereof, but because there are a lot of other Hydro characters out there who can do his job or more, or his job but better. So he's an okay character. He's not bad. He can still do everything that you want him to do. It's kind of like Yoimiya, where they're just, I would say he doesn't have quite enough to be up here. Yelan, busted. She is... No. I refuse to back down. Yelan is broken. Everyone who's saying that, oh, you're just simping for Yelan, she's over. No, she's broken. She has damage, a huge amount of damage, and then depending on the constellations you have, and of course, some characters, their positions might change based on constellations, but Yelan is broken even at base. She does a lot of damage on her own. Her Dead Clearing dice does a ton of damage. She may not have as much Hydro application as Xingqiu, but she makes up for that by just doing a lot of freaking damage. And because we're entering this sort of kind of hyper carry meta with, not really hyper carry meta, but just we're entering this meta where like we're really funneling in a lot of vertical investment into a character, her unconditional damage output from having depth clearing dice is super valuable on just about any character because it's unconditional damage. It's not even elemental damage, it's not attack, it's just unconditional total damage amp. And for a lot of teams, she's best in slot. There's no other better way to put it. She is a fantastic character and she always will be. I don't care how much better Farina is at supporting. Yelan is the best at offensive Hydro support. She's so good. I'm not even alone in this, because when her rerun came out, she was like one of the highest grossing reruns in the entire game. In fact, one of the highest grossing banners of all time. So everyone can attest to this. Next character is going to be Shinobu. I'm gonna put her either in pretty good or god carry. In fact, I might actually put her in god carry. So she is sort of the Venti case, where technically she's niche in that she's mostly only for Dendro related teams, but since Dendro is dominating the game at the moment, she's best in slot in the best in slot team. For her, she essentially makes it so that a lot of Dendro teams can function without any penalty in DPS. She's one of the few characters in version 2 onwards who is able to match the power 5 in terms of supportive capabilities, in terms of like overall output and efficiency, which is hard to come by because the power 5 have made the game almost impossible for 4 stars to find even a spot in the meta. And I think it's similar to Venti, where like you would think Venti is kind of a niche character because he has only one job, but since that one job he is best in slot in, and it's like the infinitely best way to do it, that's sort of how it is with Shinobu, where she makes Dendro teams so efficient that it overrides almost any other team in the game. So she picked a field, it just happened to be the best field relative to everything else. Shunhe, for example, she is a cryo niche. Cryo is not the best out there anymore. Sada, she picked electro niche. Electro is a powerful element, but electro hyper carry is not really, it's not like, you know, the best of the best. It's a very good team to have in terms of like, it's a competitive team, but Shinobu chose Dendro support, and Dendro is the best team in the game. Next character is gonna be Hazel. Hear me out. He was never good. Listen, I don't care how much of a sub DPS, you know, he can do falcon punches with every swirl reaction. No, it doesn't matter. Hazel has to compete with Sucrose. He has to compete with Venti. He has to compete with Kazuha. There are 3 characters all above him. Now, before you say, oh, but what if you don't have Kazuha and Venti? Everyone has Sucrose. Everyone who's been playing the game for a reasonable amount of time has Sucrose. Sucrose is infinitely better than Hazel in every possible way. Any team where you want to put in Hazel, you can put in Sucrose. So the only reason you would ever want to use Hazel is if you personally like Hazel. But personal attachment to a character does not determine if a character is good or bad. Hazel never was good. He might have been usable for a time, or he might still be usable for a time, but when he came out, he was like B tier at best. For you to be a niche or benched, you had to at least have been good at one point. Hazel was never a quote-unquote meta character. He was always in this like limbo of, he's not the worst character out there, but he's definitely not the best either. So that's why I'm putting him in never good. I know I get a lot of comments telling me, oh, but Hazel can do this, Hazel can do that, but the thing is, he's not the best option. He has to compete with these monster savages, Sucrose, Venti, Kazuha, who just completely dominate any animal aspect in the game. And even if you want to use him as a damage dealer, he has to compete with Shawa and Wander. He's pretty much never been good. I don't know how else to describe it. It's copium. I'm sorry. I apologize. All the Hazel mains, I love you, but like, seriously, he's not that good. He never was that good. Next character is going to be... oh, I missed one actually. Sayu. Sayu is another character who was never good. She's a gimmick. End of story. Right? We can all agree on that? She's a gimmick? Maybe, you know, you could say niche, right? She's niche. She has the niche. Exploration. That is kind of a niche. We could? But no, she was never good. We can probably say that out of all of the version 2 characters, she was by far the worst. She has healing as a premise, right? You know, she's Animo healing, but Animo doesn't have to be the healing role. We have Hydro, we have, I mean, if we want, we also have Jean. So we have tons of different ways to protect the team. Animo's not really known for healing, and they're just, yeah, she was never good. Again, similar to Hazel, she has to compete with such a stacked roster of Animo characters that she never stood a chance. So Sayu mains, we can put in her niche if I want to be generous, but I'll put it here. Anyways, that's going to be my list for version 2's characters. Not that many characters this time around compared to version 1, but I kind of made up for that by going more in detail on every single character. I hope this was a bit more insightful and more informative, but in any case, let me know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree with any of these placements. But apart from that, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you love to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at VarsRem, join my Discord server, and check out my version 1 tier list video if you haven't yet. Bear in mind, this is not a tier list based on like who's good and who's bad in the sense, but more just where have they ended up relative to, you know, where they started out. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon in the next episode. We're not going to do a version 3, by the way, because version 3 just happened, so we're going to have to wait maybe a couple more years for that. Like, we'll wait for like 2024, like version 5. But yeah, take care everybody, have a good one.